Good morning. Welcome to this circle that gathers us, a safe container for our grief and our gladness, a safe space for the diversity of our experience, of our cultures, of our ways of making meaning and understanding with each other, our languages, our ethnicities, our sexual orientations and gender identities, our ages and stages in life. With each other, we gather on this storied land, home to so many of us. Ancient lands of indigenous peoples, adopted lands for many of us whose ancestors or we ourselves have come to make this place home. As we gather into this circle this morning, we sing our commitment to mutuality and reconciliation as we learn a new song.
I'll introduce this song with one time through with me singing. You can follow along on the screen, and then we'll all sing it the second time. Gathering, honoring, remembering where we meet, our deep respect for history and culture still incomplete. First people's land from long before, relationships to restore, enriching and reconciling ways we live and dream for more. Gathering, honoring, remembering where we meet, our deepest respect for history and culture still incomplete. First people's land from long before, relationships to restore, enriching and reconciling ways we live and dream for more.
We place this light in our midst as a symbol of our intention to live in ways that seek light, and ways that reflect light, and ways that honor the light in one another. We light this candle to focus our intentions, to live into the best of our humanness, to turn toward better words, better ways, deeper courage, greater compassion. And in this light, we come together with each other this day to seek to strengthen our intentions, to live in this graced light of a new day, to do so with kindness and with gentleness and with integrity. When we gather with each other, we seek to name our best intentions for our living, which is to say we pray with one another. And so I invite us to offer these words in unison. In caring for one another, may we be untiring. In challenging one another, may we be respectful. In sheltering one another, may we be strong. In holding one another, may we be tender. In the expectation another, may we be generous. In the expectations we have of one another, may we be realistic. In the songs we sing with one another, may we seek harmony. And in loving one another, may we be all these things and more, as we seek to live more nearly as we pray. Amen. Some years ago, as a community, we made a commitment to study a document entitled the Earth Charter. It's an international declaration of fundamental values that represents a global movement of organizations and individuals that embrace these 4 principles you see on the right-hand slide: to respect and care for the community of life, to care for ecological integrity, social and economic justice, democracy, nonviolence, and peace. Principles that seek to offer a guide toward a more just and sustainable and peaceful world. I want to invite us to remind ourselves about the introduction to that document today, and so I'm going to invite us to read in the pods where we're seated. I'm going to begin by offering the preamble, and then when we come to the next slide and the next section, I'm going to invite those seated in this eastern quadrant to read that section together. Then we'll move to folks here, and I'm calling you the center east, I think, and then center west, and the west of the west. We stand at a crucial moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. Toward this end, it's imperative that we, the peoples of the earth, declare our responsibility to one another, to the greater community of life, and to future generations. These words speak of our responsibility. This is a poem by Naomi Shahab Nye, a Palestinian-American woman who writes of her experience. This is her poem entitled Shoulders. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but it's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say, fragile, handle with care. His ears fill up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. This is the insight of a contemporary poet.
This is a reading of a familiar story that appears in the book of Luke in the Christian tradition's texts. Jesus said, "Once there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that's coming to me when you die.' So he did. He divided his resources between his 2 sons. Not too many days later, the younger son got all of his things together and left home for a faraway country where he squandered his property by living undisciplined and wastefully. Just when he had wasted it all, a serious famine swept through that country, and he began to hurt. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that place, who sent him out to his farm to feed the pigs. He was so hungry, he would have eaten the corn cobs in the pig slop, but no one offered him anything. Finally, coming to his senses, he said, 'Lots of my father's hired hands have more than enough to eat, while here I am, dying of starvation. I'll get up and go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I've acted poorly, and I've affronted you. I don't deserve to be called a son of yours any longer, so treat me like one of your hired hands.' And he got up and he returned to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was moved to compassion. He went running out to him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I've acted poorly and affronted you, and I don't deserve to be called your son any longer.' But the father wasn't listening. He was calling his servants. 'Quick, bring out the finest robe and put it on him. Put the family ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Fetch the fat calf and start roasting it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. My son was given up for dead and is now alive. He was given up as lost and now is found.' And they started celebrating. All this time, his older son was out in the field. When the day's work was done, he came in and asked what was happening with all the music and the dancing. And he was told, 'Your brother came home. Your father's ordered a feast because he has him home safe and sound.' The older brother was angry and refused to go in. So his father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, "Look, how many years I've stayed here serving you, never giving you one moment of grief. But have you ever thrown a party for me and my friends? Then this son of yours, who's thrown away your money and his life, shows up, and you go all out with a feast." His father said to him, "Son, you don't understand. You were always at my side. Everything that's mine is yours. But we had to celebrate because this brother of yours was dead, and he's alive. He was lost, and now is found." This is among the most familiar parables attributed to Jesus of Nazareth. May we find wisdom for our living.
There's something about us as these human creatures. We think in categories. I remember when people asked me what I did for a living and I said I was a lawyer, the next question would always be, "What kind of lawyer are you?" And I'd want to say, "Pretty good, I think." But I knew what they were really asking was, "What kind of law do you practice?" You know, criminal, corporate, family law. In our world of increasing specialization, we're creating more and more categories in every field, in every discipline, even in the ways we name ourselves. How many more letters of the alphabet can you put with LGBTQ2S? And we're going to soon have to find ways to ask each other, "What kind of retired are you?" And when I reflect on those readings we just heard this morning, I find myself asking, what kind of species are we? In that old story Chris read for us that's been around since the 1st century, we meet some of the possibilities for our species. We often read it as the story, a parable about a fictitious family, a parent and 2 siblings and the relationships between them. A selfish, rebellious son, a dutiful, resentful older brother, a compassionate parent who wants the best for both children. But what if this story can also be the parable of a species? The story of a prodigal species that has squandered its inheritance, is waking up to its predicament, and is coming home to face the love and rage of the situation. Then it might be a story that invites us to think about what kind of human we want to be. We've been shaped by a scientific narrative that's built on the assumption that evolution is a dog-eat-dog, intense competition for survival. The winners are the species that become most adapted, most fitted to the environment. which would suggest that every species finds itself in a fierce battle just to be. But we're beginning to learn a new version of life's story, a story of life's long emergence as an epic journey of creative responses, responding to events. Sometimes those events are cataclysmic and sometimes they're opportunistic. And responding to emerging conditions in creative and complex ways. We're beginning to recognize so many Goldilocks moments in our billions of years of evolution in the universe that provided just the right conditions for life to emerge from an mysterious explosion of energy to a sequence of transformations that birthed the earliest generations of stars in various galaxies, to the collapse of stars, creating carbon, the stuff of life, along with all the heavy elements that provided the conditions and the opportunities for a planet like ours to form. And we're beginning to know our story as a story of remarkable cooperation. Not just a tale of intense competition. Ultimately, it seems like we're here because single-celled bacteria eventually got together and mobilized their resources to innovate, not just to survive, but to thrive. And together, they made something new. They created a nucleus. And that innovation allowed for the emergence of multicellular organisms. And life began to leap toward new possibilities. Life that evolves through mergers instead of simple divisions. Whereas life had continued to this point by single cells dividing, this innovation of creating a nucleus and merging with other cells propelled us towards greater diversity and complexity. And in a more intimate way, life emerges out of the matrix of those relationships from accidents and from experiments of communion. Surely we're indebted to some Goldilocks conditions and some Cinderella moments. Those great moments of coming together when the shoe fits, when one element fuses with another, where 2 parts of hydrogen meld with 1 part of oxygen, and we don't get an explosion of gases, we get a liquid that gives us life. We get water, the bloodstream, the source of all that is. We have those Cinderella moments when a mutation propels life forward by developing an eye or creating a limb or a lung that can breathe outside of water, or one species mates with another, or the unique fit between 2 different life forms lets something novel emerge. We didn't get here by winning a genetic race and beating out all our competitors for light and air. We got here through a long series of reciprocities, of cooperative ventures, of symbiosis, of discovering some mutually beneficial relationships like the great exchange between sun and plants, the great exchange of photosynthesis, the great exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, and the great exchange of breath. Life unfolding, a long story of adaptation and innovation and transformation and cooperation. And perhaps as the Earth Charter reminds us, in that long story, we have again come to a crucial moment in our evolutionary journey that depends on a new awakening, a great homecoming of the human species, of waking up from the nightmare of our squander and selfishness, transcending our earliest instincts of fight and flight, and waking to a new kind of consciousness, to become Homo sapien, to become the wise, upright ones who not only have that old reptilian brain, but also a limbal neocortex brain that lets us learn and remember and be moved by emotion and awaken to our compassion. Because if we can evolve, if we can wake up from that self-centered species to a life-centered species, we won't disappear like the dinosaurs, nor will we continue to damage our home and threaten other forms of life. We have the potential to evolve from an egocentric species to an ecocentric species. It's within us to come home to the potential of our humanity. But you know, it's not a time for being optimists or pessimists. It's a time for realists to become potentialists. It's a time to open to our human potential for living an ethic of compassion. To be like the parent in that old first century story, and to be like the father in the poem, carrying the child on his shoulders. And surely that poet is prophetic when she says, we're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. Doesn't the future of life depend in a very real way on a quantum leap in our ethical evolution? A quantum leap beyond squandering and deadly competition to the kind of compassion that carries the preciousness of life and the preciousness of earth and the preciousness of each other on our shoulders, that sees the obligation of one generation to the next to be that of boosting the generation coming behind us onto our shoulders. As spiritual beings in a human experience, it's time for us to experience a great awakening, a coming to ourselves, as the young son did when he was a long ways away from home and a long ways away from himself. A kind of ethical uprising, an actualizing of our great potential for two of our stunning, renewable, natural resources, our creativity and our compassion. In this silence we hold with each other, it's time to ask ourselves some questions about where we are, what kind of a human we are, what kind of a species we are, how an ethic of compassion might evolve in us, and what kind of human we could become, what we'd be coming home to, what we're awakening to.
when we seek to be true to ourselves and seek to live from our highest humanity, we seek to share kindness, show compassion with one another, and we do that best when we do it in community. In that spirit, we honor and demonstrate that care among us on a morning like this, when we can share our true hearts, when we can place before us those places in our world, in our communities, in our lives, those places where we experience real joy, but also those places where we experience challenge, where we're called upon to put all our resources, to pour our hearts, to put our perseverance. And so by our response, we can live our intentions to live a caring and compassionate life with one another. And so I open this time up to this time of sharing, where we can place before us those places in our lives, in our world, that need our voice, that need our care, that need our compassion, those places in our lives worthy of celebrating, worthy of our effort.
And I know I should know what to do for him, but I just seek guidance to know how to reach out to him and hang on to him from a distance.
In this, our honest prayer.
To celebrate our 55th anniversary, and that I just thought in caring for one another, may we be untiring.
In this, our honest prayer. Love abound.
I think with compassion about all the displaced folks and animals in British Columbia and elsewhere where there are wildfires. In this, our honest prayer.
May love abound. In these prayers that we share, we're able to commit to each other the care and compassion that we can live out with each other in community. But for all those prayers, of course, that go unnamed, that remain within our hearts, we offer our time and know that love abounds in each of our lives and in each of those places. Now is also a time when we can share the life and work of this community and know that there's time and space for us to share things that are coming up in our work together. If there are any things to share, you can make your way up here to offer that to the community. Oh, I forgot to turn that on.
I thought that was kind of echoing back to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been a part of the planning committee for the Ever Wonder Conference, and 5 weeks from today, here, this conference is going to happen. I see lots of reactions around the room, and this can be an opportunity for you to take the next step in a certain aspect of evolution of your thinking, possibly within and beyond denominations as they exist. One of the presentations, a panel will include someone whose background is as an atheist, another a humanist, another a Unitarian, And there will also be the voices of a number of United Church people here in the city. In addition to Greta Vosper, who is our coming here as our special guest, and Chris and Nancy will be very involved in the process. I am happy to say a number of you, when I made this announcement last week, said, how many registrations are there? Well, we're actually getting close to our 120, which is supposed to be our limit. But this is the problem that we had hoped to have. So Fabian and I will be in the foyer after the service if you have any questions, comments, and also we have application forms in case you would like one of those. And the deadline is August the 10th, and we'll see whether we need to work with that. Thank you.
We have a moment that we sometimes call a moment for stewardship, and as we just enter that moment, I just want to highlight two activities of our community that helps us to engage and to know kind of what's going on around here in the summertime. And here's two things that have been going on. Some volunteers from among us prepared and served dinner on Friday evening at Camp Firefly. Camp Firefly is a supportive and inclusive camp for LGBTQ youth that happens every year and that we support in various ways. One of the ways is we support through our Affirm lunches that raises funds for some scholarships to 2 youth every year to attend Camp Firefly that supports those youth from various backgrounds, what it's like to accept themselves, to affirm who they are. And for those 8 or so of us that prepared and served dinner out there on Friday night at Pigeon Lake, it was a great experience for all of us who helped serve, and to know that this camp is going strong, and there were about 50 youth really engaged and excited to be participating in Camp Firefly this year. On another front, there is a group of people who have started coming together to form a refugee support committee. They've already helped to make possible this summer new immigrant families' 3 children to attend summer camp, and will today be turning their attention to the next refugee sponsorship that we might take on as a community. We have a long history of supporting and sponsoring refugees to come to this country and to make a home here, and it's time to turn our attention to who and when the next sponsorship opportunity might be upon us. So this group is meeting right after this gathering in the lounge just out there, and if this is an interest to you, you're still welcome to join that group as they meet today and do the exciting work of preparing to welcome and host a new refugee family to Canada. Those are just some of the ways that our contributions of time and energy and of finances make this a rich spiritual community who seeks to make a positive difference in the world. Supporting us is easy. If you take a moment immediately following the gathering, you can offer your donations of cash or checks in the offering box just at the door as you leave this space. Or if you'd prefer to donate regularly and automatically from your bank account, you can see one of us in the foyer afterwards about what that means and more information about that. Or you can donate on our website at any time, and there's an easy way to do that when you click the donate button on our homepage. So it's with gratitude to all who contribute in the many ways that we can be who we are together, and continue to do what we love to do around here in sharing love and compassion among us and with the world. So thank you to all who support that endeavor. And so it is that we go, renewed to be the best humans that we can be on this journey of spirit and this journey of life. We go in the hopes that we grow ever toward a more caring, a more kind, a more compassionate existence. And we go knowing that we walk in light, the light that we hold for one another, and the light that exists in and among and between us all. We go in the spirit of that light.